Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance with Maria Merola and Gary Wold, brought to you by DoublePortionInheritance.com. Since 1981, Maria heard the call of Yahuwah to become a watchman to the house of Yisrael and to those within the traditional Christian church. She was instructed to warn them against the false doctrines and pagan traditions of men. After 25 years of studying Scripture, the word of Yahuwah came to Maria again in 2007 as she was called out of the corporate world to become a full-time intercessor and prophetic teacher. The name of the ministry, Double Portion Inheritance, was given to her after she received the revelation of the two houses of Yisrael from Ezekiel 37:16. The mission of this ministry is to bring together the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph for the return of the Messiah, Yahushua. And now, Maria Merola.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today is August 5th, 2023, and the name of this teaching is Trump, the Phoenix Rising from the Ashes. This past week, Tuesday, August 2nd, the news media ran stories that President Donald Trump was indicted on felony charges for working to overturn the results of the 2020 election. In the run-up to the violent riot by his supporters at the U.S. Capitol, with the Justice Department acting to hold him accountable for an unprecedented effort to block the peaceful transfer of presidential power and threaten American democracy. Now, that comes from AP News report, okay? Those aren't my words, that's their words. And you can go to the article, but it says here, the 4-count indictment, the third criminal case against Trump, provided deeper insight into a dark moment that has already been the subject of exhaustive federal investigations and captivating public hearings. It chronicles a months-long campaign of lies about the election results and says that even when those falsehoods resulted in a chaotic insurrection at the Capitol, Trump sought to exploit the violence by pointing to it as a reason to further delay the counting of votes that sealed his defeat. Okay, so that's the word of AP News. Those are not my words, okay? So, in an interview hours after former President Donald Trump was indicted for an alleged conspiracy to overturn the 2020 presidential election, one of his attorneys said that all Trump had ultimately asked of his vice president was to simply pause the Electoral College count at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. On Fox News, though, this past week, former Vice President Mike Pence called that claim completely false. Pence said Trump and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked him to literally reject votes. Pence went on to say, I think it's important that the American people know what happened in the days before January 6th. Pence said, President Trump demanded that I use my authority as vice president presiding over the count of the Electoral College to essentially overturn the election by returning or literally rejecting votes. I had no authority to do that. For those who might doubt him, Pence urged them, read the indictment. Watch Special Counsel Jack Smith's full statement after Trump federal indictment. Special Counsel Jack Smith spoke after the indictment of former President Trump on 4 federal charges. Now, this is from Twitter, January 5th, 2021. This is something that Donald Trump tweeted. It says, the vice president has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors. But apparently, that turned out not to be true. Pence is featured prominently throughout the 45-page indictment, but there are 7.5 pages that specifically deal with the defendants, which is Trump's attempt to enlist the vice president to fraudulently alter the election results at the January 6th certification proceedings. Now, these are not my words, okay? This is coming from this article right here, okay? Fact check. It's from, ABC, NBC, what Donald Trump asked of Mike Pence. So these are not my words. And this isn't necessarily my opinion. I'm just reporting what, they're saying, right? So you see, there is actual evidence that Trump did conspire to alter the election results. However, I believe this is all part of a psychological operation, or what we would call a psyop, and I will explain why they did it. In my personal opinion, and from what I've observed about how the Illuminati strategize, I believe these events were deliberately staged on both sides. In other words, both the Democrats and the Republicans each played their roles to orchestrate a grand illusion in front of the American people to make it appear that Trump was contesting the results of the election. But in fact, I believe Trump knew that Biden was chosen by the elites to take office in 2021, and he wanted it to happen. But why? The plan was to place Biden, the senile, bumbling idiot, in this role as the scapegoat to make Trump look like the savior and the hero by comparison. The entire scenario was foretold in the film called Megamind from 2010, where Megamind injects this cameraman named Hal, who is also a bumbling idiot, with a DNA-altering substance, and he goes on a rampage to completely destroy Metro City. By the end of the film, the citizens of Metro City, along with the news reporter Roxanne Ritchie, beg Megamind to return to the Oval Office so that he can restore order out of chaos caused by Hal. They were showing us that Biden was placed in office to create the chaos, which would then give rise to Trump returning to office to restore order. And by that, I mean more government control and ultimately martial law. So when they say order out of chaos, they don't mean order in a good way. They mean more restrictions to the people. So the other purpose for allowing Biden to wreak havoc in America is to take the heat off of Trump for his deadly snake bites, which he officially rolled out on December 21st, 2020, calling it a great Christmas miracle. In this blog, which, it's called Trump's Rise to Power Foretold in Megamind, you will discover predictive programming from the film entitled Megamind, revealing the secret Illuminati plot to catapult Trump into power by first making him an underdog and a persecuted messiah. You see, they have to make him look like the one that's getting beat up on so that then he can rise up from the ashes and become the hero. Okay? Now, before I share with you the comments of radio host Hal Turner, it is important that I share this information with you about how United States presidents rise to power, and it's not because they are elected by the American people. You see, every United States president is descended from this one guy named Charlemagne, King Charlemagne. In the year 800, he became the Pope of the Holy Roman Empire. So all the presidents of the United States have a certain pedigree, a certain royal bloodline. And they are chosen. They are selected. They are not elected, okay, by the American people. This means every U.S. president has not been elected by the American people. I had come to this realization in the year 2002 that United States presidents are not elected. They are selected by the Bilderberg Group, which are headed by the Rothschilds and the Rockefeller families. I learned this little tidbit from all the research I had done after the events of 9/11/2001. I've got this other blog here called the Trump Rockefeller and Rothschild connection, which if there's time, I might go over it. But from my research, I discovered that at least 34 of United States presidents are genetically related to one single royal bloodline, going all the way back to Charlemagne of France. The rest of the United States presidents are related either to King Edward or King John of England. In other words, they all descend from Charlemagne, but some of the ones that descend from Charlemagne also descend from King Edward or King John of England. So this means every single United States president is chosen by royal bloodline, and they are not elected by the people, except for one. Abraham Lincoln is the only one that doesn't descend from these guys, okay? Now, I've got lots of links here. Donald Trump, the devil's run for the White House. 43 U.S. presidents have carried European royal blood into office. Walter Veith, the Trump card, updated 2016. Bloodlines of all U.S. presidents. Why call them blue bloods? Interesting facts. 43 out of 44 presidents share the same royal bloodline of King John of England. Here's another article, Trump, Charlemagne, and Nostalgia. Excellent read. All these articles are there. If you want to go back and read this blog, I recommend these articles. So this article claims all U.S. presidents, except for one, are descended from King John of England. Okay, now that we have established the probability that U.S. presidents are selected rather than elected, let's get something straight. Election fraud has been taking place since before the Declaration of Independence, when the United States of America paid taxes to the British Crown. However, the illusion that we had freed ourselves from the Crown in the Revolutionary War only lasted for 95 years. Because in 1871, the United States of America ceased to be a republic and became a corporation of foreign bankers. What Congress did by passing the Act of 1871 was to create an entirely new document, a constitution for the government of the District of Columbia, an incorporated government. This newly altered constitution was not intended to benefit the republic. It benefits only the corporation of the United States of America and operates entirely outside the original organic Constitution. In other words, we the people have been cut out of the Constitution since 1871. They give us the illusion that we're voting for somebody, but we are not. By the passing of the Act of 1871, Congress committed treason against the people who were sovereign under the grants and decrees of the Declaration of Independence and the organic Constitution of the United States of America. Now, I want to explain why President Trump had to leave office and allow Biden to appear to be the winner. You see, Trump is following this book entitled Draining the Swamp, the NESARA Story. The author is Harvey Francis Bernard. And by the way, his name also adds up to 666. NESARA stands for National Economic Security and Reformation Act. There's also GESARA, which stands for Global Economic Security and Reformation Act. So Trump has been following this book as his playbook. And at first glance, this sounds like a perfect utopia for all Americans because it calls for the abolishment of corruption in government and putting a stop to election fraud. However, you will learn that this is simply a counterfeit of the year of Jubilee that the real Messiah, Yahushua, will usher in at his return. You see, Trump is seeking to imitate the real Messiah in every way, and that includes making himself appear to bring in all the things that go along with the year of Jubilee in Scripture, such as justice, debt cancellation, taking vengeance on his enemies, like the deep state and the cabal, abolishing the IRS, and bringing back the gold standard for currency. So at first, it will appear that Trump is saving us from the globalists, like Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. There will be a brief period of what you would call the calm before the storm. Trump will appear to have saved America from the ultra-left-wing Democrats who are bordering on communism. He will restore the economy back to the way things were before he left office, but he will bring in a different kind of tyranny, which is nationalism, aka fascism, Nazism. In other words, it's like the seemingly opposite of communism, but it's going to be just like Hitler. Okay, what's the difference between Hitler and Joseph Stalin? Not much. Not much. Okay, so listed below are all the seemingly wonderful reforms that will be made under Trump's NESARA. And here they are. A law was passed in March of 2000 and signed into law in October of 2000. This law is called NESARA, National Economic Security and Reformation Act. The law provides the following: forgives credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking and government activities, abolishes income tax, abolishes IRS, creates flat rate non-essential new items only, sales tax revenue for government, increases benefits to senior citizens, returns to constitutional law, establishes new presidential and congressional elections within 120 days after NESARA's announcement, monitors elections and prevents illegal election activities or special interest groups, creates new U.S. Treasury currency called rainbow currency, backed by gold, silver, and platinum, precious metals, returns constitutional law to all our courts and legal matters, initiates new U.S. Treasury bank system in alignment with constitutional law, eliminates the Federal Reserve System, restores financial privacy, restrains all judges and attorneys in constitutional law, ceases all aggressive U.S. government military actions worldwide, establishes peace throughout the world, initiates the first phase of worldwide prosperity, distribution of vast wealth which has been accumulating for many decades, releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes, enables the release of new technologies such as alternative energy devices. Sounds like the second coming of the real Messiah, doesn't it? But it'll be the second coming of Donald Trump, which everybody's going to think he's the Messiah when he brings all this to America. Okay, so I have all these links. NESARA is now being implemented, and then GESARA. NESARA was implemented and announced on November 2nd, 2020. NESARA law implementation staged by Trump. United States is a federal corporation, says U.S. Code Title 28. The United States of America is a corporation owned by federal interests. The United States of America is a corporation. There's all these links. Okay, there's a lot of them. Is Joe Biden really the president of the United States? I personally say no. I believe Trump never actually left office. He gave the illusion that he left office, but he's still been running things. Because let me ask you a question. Who's been dominating the news media these last 7 years, like say since 2015? 8 years, right? Who's been in the news media more than any other political figure? Can you answer the question? Do, 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 do. We know who that is, right? Who's dominated the news media? Listen, the person who's in the news media the most is the person who runs the world, because that person is making money for the global bankers. Do you see Obama in the news very often? Nah. Do you see King Charles in the news media very often? Nope. Who do you see in the news media almost on a daily basis? Who's making big bucks for all the news media outlets and the global bankers? Who's generating revenue with all these news stories? Trump. Nobody else. Okay? So get the picture. It can't be Obama that's going to be the world ruler. He's not generating income for the global bankers and for the news media outlets, is he? No.
Trump is the news gift that keeps on giving.
That's right. So this is the reason why President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. President Lincoln was trying to stop the foreign bankers from taking sovereign power away from the people of America. He knew what they were trying to do to our nation, and he spoke out against it. Now, to learn more, I have another blog called The Confusion of Inauguration Day 2021, and I go into a lot more detail about Lincoln's assassination, how it was orchestrated by the Jesuits of Rome. Okay, now I want to get to the meat of this discussion. August 2nd, 2023, radio host Hal Turner reported on his website the following. Latest indictment against Trump backfires, gives Trump ability to relitigate entire 2020 election, prove fraud. It says, you just activated my Trump card. Okay. So obviously, Hal Turner is a Trump supporter.
And so is Sebastian Gorka, and they're saying the same thing.
Okay.
They're all saying it.
So here's the link. And I'm going to read what Hal Turner says. These are not my opinions. I'm just quoting him. This is what Hal Turner is saying on his website. I'm not going to read the whole article because it's too lengthy. He says the deep state and Democrat political thugs, like as if only the Democrats are the political thugs. Look, they're all thugs. Doesn't matter. They're two wings on the same bird. But this is Hal Turner's words. He says the deep state and Democrat political thugs are doing their best to stop President Trump from being reelected. Once again, presidents are not elected. They are selected, and Trump's been selected for at least 100 years before he was even born. They already knew the royal blood family that he comes from, and they planned his birth. They planned what colleges he was going to go to. They planned everything. I've read that this is what they do. They have planned and scripted out like 100 years to 50 years in advance what they're going to do. Okay? So, but Hal Turner thinks that the deep state, the Democratic political thugs are trying to stop Trump from being reelected. He doesn't need to be reelected. He was selected. Okay? And it says that they may have wrecked their own effort with the third and latest indictment against Trump. But I'm going to say these indictments were scripted. Trump knew about them before he ever came into office. He knew this was going to be the plan, and he welcomes all these indictments. Why? Because it's all part of the plan that's going to catapult him back into power. The latest indictment directly involves the January 6th protest at the Capitol, a protest that challenged the legitimacy of the fraud-ridden November 2020 election. As a result of the latest indictment, Trump now has subpoena power for his case. With subpoena power, he can subpoena everything the deep state Democrats and their black-robed bimbos on the courts tried to keep off the record and secret. Trump attorney John Lauro made clear this is precisely what the Trump team intends to do when he remarked, "We now have the ability in this case to issue our subpoenas and we will relitigate every single issue in the 2020 election. It gives President Trump an opportunity that he has never had before, which is to have subpoena power. Okay, so this is a graphic that Hal Turner displayed on his website. It says, now pay attention to these 55 California electoral votes, because here's how CNN reported the final electoral vote tally. 306 Biden, 51.3%. And it says 270 to win. And then it says Trump, 232, 46.9%. Now, this is what he says. Pay attention to those 55 California electoral votes, because here's how CNN reported the final electoral vote tally. Do you see the part in the middle which says 270 to win? Now, deduct those 55 California electoral votes from Joe Biden's 306 total, and you get 251. Thus, with the fraud in California alone, Joe Biden did not have the required 270 votes. He only had 251. He is not the legitimate president. There's plenty more fraud elsewhere, too. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite lengthy, but Hal Turner, he lays out all the different states where there has been fraud. He even says that in Savannah, Georgia, a Microsoft engineer hired to examine the voting system found that a smart thermostat in the tabulation room was communicating wirelessly with the tabulation computer, then sending the data to an IP address located in China. Okay. He says that foreigners were able to manipulate the U.S. vote tabulation computers in Georgia. He says Wisconsin, 200,000 ballots were invalidated by a judge. The government in that state did not deduct the votes or assign the win to Trump. They instead sent Biden electoral votes to Washington. More fraud. Maricopa County, Arizona, the state legislature ordered a forensic inspection of Phoenix voting equipment. Do you think it's an accident that they are conducting the investigations in Phoenix, Arizona? You see, the phoenix is a mystical bird in the occult world that dies and then he rises back up out of the ashes. You see, what they're trying to do is tell us that Trump is coming back, I believe, as the phoenix that rises up. So that's what I believe they're trying to tell us. That's why they have the election fraud being investigated in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a hint. They're telling us that Trump is the phoenix who's going to rise up from the seemingly dead political career. Now, I'm going to weigh in. I knew this was coming. I've been seeing this all along, even before January 6, 2021, that these events have been planned years in advance by the Illuminati to make Trump to appear to be a persecuted martyr and a suffering Messiah. Even Roseanne Barr made an astonishing statement on the Tom Pool show on July 29th. I don't usually listen to that kind of stuff, but Gary was listening to it, I guess, in the car somewhere as you were driving?
Yep.
She stated that she does not believe there will be another election. She even made a $1,000 bet with Tim Pool that Trump will return without an election. People, I've been saying this for 3 years, that I don't believe there's going to be another election. I believe Trump is coming back as number 45, not number 47.
All right, and it's the Tim Pool podcast.
Yeah, it's only 4 minutes.
I don't think we're going to have no election
You want to
in
bet money?
2024. I'll bet.
How much? $100?
How much you got?
Not as much as you.
I'll bet big. I don't think we're going to have no election.
$1,000.
All right, I'll bet.
Shake hands.
I hate shaking hands. Go like this.
It's worth it. Oh, that was a good one.
$1,000. So if we have an election 2024, you're going to give me $1,000.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Jake, does she have it? Yeah. Does she have? You don't have like a Britney Spears relationship with her, right? She has control of her money.
I got $1,000, but
Okay.
you're going to have to pay me $1,000 when we do not have no election.
I would be delighted.
Well,
and I'll buy you a nice dinner on top of that.
Why do you think there won't be an election?
Because I think the corruption is just beginning to come out, and I think it's going to avalanche the corruption of the Biden administration and the money they took. First, it's going to be about Ukraine and Russia, then it's going to go into China, then it's going to go into the DOJ, and it's going to be like a big old avalanche.
That would prompt an election.
Huh?
That would prompt an election.
No, because I think that it's going to get so bad in the streets, too, that I think the military is going to step in.
I mean, Michael, we've talked about many people have come on the show said this is like the one time they actually are not convinced there will be an election. That is not to say
We hear that every 4 years.
but
No, we don't.
no, come on.
Yes, we
Not
do.
like now.
Not like now.
I remember very vividly in Newsmax.com in 2000, they were arguing that Clinton is not going to leave the White House.
And they argued that in 2016.
Yes.
But that's not every single time. This is the culture war period.
Do you want to
Yes,
end this
this
action
is the-
too?
this
I'll
is
bet
the
$1,000 with you too.
I didn't say there wasn't going to be an election. I'm saying we've had people on the show where we've discussed what is the potentiality, what is the percentage rate of there not being an election, and it's not zero.
It's not zero. That's fair. We had an election during the Civil War. We had an election during World War II. So the best predictor of future behavior is history. So if there was precedent for canceling elections, I'd be more receptive to this argument. I don't. And here's the thing: they don't need to cancel it.
Exactly.
That's the point.
I know, it's disturbing.
It's much better for them to have a perception that when Trudeau got reelected. Hold on, let me finish my point in 1 second. When Trudeau just got reelected with the exact same number of seats as previously, he said, "Oh, I have a mandate." So they will absolutely have the election. Whatever happens, they'll say we have a mandate to do with whatever
We need to clarify this.
She's saying she thinks there'll be martial law because what comes out will cause such chaos in society that they will have to, for the time being, suspend any election.
More information comes out that proves things that certain people don't think are ever going to be proven.
Okay, we need to clarify this bet.
Okay.
What do you mean by election?
I mean a presidential election.
Yeah, people go in and vote.
Okay, so in 1876, people went in to vote.
Yes.
And then the president was determined by a committee.
No, there were two sets of electors in Florida. I just read a book about this. But they had an election.
And the election didn't matter.
It did matter. It was question of which votes are the ones to count.
And you know who decided which votes to count?
Because they had a conference.
And so
but they still had the election.
And they decided we are going to end Reconstruction and we're going to split this up so that we don't have another.
That's a historical myth. I'm telling you, I just read a book about this literally like in the last 6 months. Like so that's.
But
what
why
we're
is
taught in
that
high
book
school.
correct and what I read not correct?
Because. Okay, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. The point is, I just read a book about this. This has been a historical thing that they cut this deal behind the scenes. It was much more complicated than that. That's all I'm going to say. But I'm not here to argue about 1876.
Well, with modern day elections, I'm concerned that there's going to be a dog and pony show, and they're like, "Hey, everybody voted," and they're like, "Hey, but we're just going to go in the back room and count it, and then tell you what the answer is."
Like
You're like, "Dude, show me the votes in public."
That's the thing. Like, there's no for them to actually have military law. It's really hard to put that over.
That's enough.
Yeah. So I've been saying this for 3 years. Have I not been saying that I believe Trump might be coming back without an election?
Yep.
I've been saying that for 3 years.
You didn't say how. You didn't say what mechanism it would, what circumstances.
Right.
That's not the point.
Right.
Yep.
But the reason I believe that, and I'll get to the reasons, I'll explain why I've come to this realization. So I believe Trump could very well return to office without another election, and he will continue to be number 45. Now, as I've already said, in the occult world, the phoenix represents something that dies and rises again from the ashes, just like a resurrection or a reincarnation. The election fraud investigations have been taking place in Phoenix, Arizona, for a very specific reason. They are letting us know that Trump is like the phoenix who will rise up from the ashes. They even placed a giant phoenix on this colossal image of Trump that they displayed at the Tuscany, Italy parade. I believe this was in 2017. You can see the phoenix bird right there, and another one across his chest. He's got the claw, the Statue of Liberty here. There's a communist symbol on this shoulder right here. Back to the blog. Here we go. So in all of his NFT cards, Trump continues to display the number 45. He's got right here on the checkerboard floor, 45, 45, 45, 45. Got the black and white Freemasonry checkerboard floor. He's wearing a crown. He's got the whole world in his hands. Just like that song about Messiah. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world, And, here he's wearing, I didn't mean to do that. He's got the number 45 on his boots. He's got the number 45 here. Number 45 down here on the floor. This one where he's riding a white horse, 45, 45, 45, 45. He keeps displaying the number 45. Now, you would think that if he wants us to know that he's so confident about winning this next election, that he's going to become number 47, that he would put number 47 on his NFT cards as a way of saying, I'm so sure I'm going to win. I'm naming it and claiming it. Because, he does hang out with all the name it and claim it preachers like Kenneth Copeland and Paula White. And so you would think the name it and claim it preachers would say, yeah, put 47 on your NFT cards. Just name it and claim it. You're going to be number 47. But no, he continues to put 45. Why? That's been bugging me. And I've been saying, there's a reason why he still keeps displaying 45, 45, 45. Why is he subliminally keep showing us the number 45? It's like he wants us to know, I'm still 45 and I'm going to be 45. And that I'm never coming back as 47. I'm still 45, And, 1 Peter 5:8 says, your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour. This card right here has him like a roaring lion. And, the name Donald also means world ruler in Gaelic, in Scottish. And there he is. He's the ruler of the world. He's got the crown. He's on the chessboard, the Scottish Rite Freemason chessboard. He's got the whole world in his hands. And he's got the American flag in the other hand. So the NESARA Act and the NESARA Act. In other words, global and national. Okay? And he's the rider on the white horse, Revelation 6:2. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Okay? So he's telling us in plain sight who he is. Now, this bothered me because when I watched the movie Megamind, at first we just watched it for fun. This was back in 2015. I had just moved here after Gary and I got married, and his teenage daughters were visiting for the weekend, and we were just looking for something to watch with his teenage kids. And we watched this movie, and we thought it was cute and funny, and it is. It's a cute and funny movie. But I started picking up on little, predictive programming in it. But then I went back and watched it again in 2020 during the scamdemic. And I picked up so much more. So there's a scene in the movie where Roxanne Ritchie, she's a news reporter, and this is Megamind, but he's shapeshifted as this guy named Bernard. Remember Harvey Francis Bernard, who wrote the book, The NESARA Act? That's why I believe they gave this character the name Bernard, And when she first meets Bernard at the Megamind Museum, or the Metro Man Museum, I should say, she calls him Barry by accident. Now, Obama's birth name is Barry Soetoro. And she says, oh, Barry, your name's Barry, right? He says, no, it's Bernard. Okay. Now, you might think that was just random, but no, it wasn't random. I believe they were telling us, no, Barry's not coming back. Barry's not coming back to the Oval Office. It's Bernard. And who's following the NESARA, Drain the Swamp book written by Harvey Francis Bernard? It's Trump. Okay? So Roxanne Ritchie, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Roxanne Ritchie and this guy who's really Megamind, but he's shape-shifted as Bernard, they're on this elevator and they're going down. And she says, if only the world had a reset button. And at that moment that she says that, the number 45 appears on the elevator door. Okay. Now, I thought that was very curious. Okay. Roxanne Ritchie is a news reporter in the film called Megamind from 2010. And when she says, if only the world had a reset button, suddenly the number 45 appears on the elevator door. Why does Trump continue to refer to himself as number 45 if he's hoping to become number 47? Why has the election fraud been investigated in Phoenix, Arizona? Because the phoenix is a mystical bird that rises from the ashes after being dead. Don't be surprised if Trump returns as number 45. And here he is on one of his NFT cards, pretending to be Elvis Presley with the number 45 in the background. Now, one of the things he did at the Tupelo, Mississippi rally, he said that people used to tell him when he was younger that he looked like Elvis Presley. Everybody laughed and made fun of that because we don't really see any resemblance. But I believe that was some kind of cryptic message. I think that Trump was saying, you know how Elvis Presley faked his own death? Because I watched a documentary on that, and it's possible that Elvis really did fake his own death. Don't know for sure, but I think he's sending out a cryptic message. Maybe he's going to fake his own assassination and come back as a resurrected, who knows? Maybe a clone or something. Maybe even a younger version of himself. We'll see. But definitely some cryptic stuff going on. Now, why does the number 45 appear on the elevator door in the Megamind movie at the same time that Roxanne Ritchie says, if only the world had a reset button? And then right after that, Bernard says, I've looked into the reset button. The science is impossible. Okay. When they talk about the science, I think they're talking about the you-know-what, the DNA altering you-know-what, right? Trump being able to finally litigate the election fraud case, thus giving him the opportunity to prove he is still number 45, the 45th president, could not have come at a more opportune time. If President Trump returns to office without an election, this single event will cause so much chaos throughout the world, it will definitely push the global reset button. And I suspect that this will give rise to martial law, which is what the global elites want. Their motto is order out of chaos. Okay, here it is. The Jesuit dialectic, Ordo ab Chao. The agenda, centralization of power under the Vatican of Rome. Thesis, terrorism, faked or real. Antithesis, anti-terrorism. Increasing police state. Synthesis, new thesis, removal of freedoms. Transfer of power to the one world government under the Vatican of Rome. Okay, and then you've got the two-headed eagle, which stands for the Holy Roman Empire. And above that, you got the number 33 on the inside of the triangle. Okay, so the World Economic Forum just announced on July 12th, they say that we must be implanted under the skin if we want to participate in society. This was July 10th, 2023. Okay. And it says fact checked here. Like that really means anything, but Okay. So the fact that this is happening right now with Trump being given the opportunity to relitigate the election fraud, and it's happening all within the same time frame that they want to roll out this new form of currency, I don't think it's by happenstance. So for these past 3 years, there were these nagging questions in my mind. Why make a big deal about January 6, 2021 if nothing was going to be done about it? Why would Trump insist that he won only to be made a fool of for these past 3.5 years? See, Trump is no fool. Everybody thinks he is because he makes himself look like that. But really, he's being shrewd. And when he says these things, he's making cryptic statements. When he insisted that he didn't lose the election, that he won, that's because he knows that it's all been scripted anyway. Because he has to make himself appear to be the persecuted martyr, like a resurrected Messiah. The entire January 6th event was scripted by both parties, both Democrats and Republicans, to make Trump the Apollyon who ascends, who rises up from the bottomless pit. That's out of Revelation 9:11. I have another blog called The Mystery Behind the Insurrection at the Capitol Dome, and I highly recommend it because there was so much satanic ritual going on January 6th that went over most people's heads. Most people wouldn't recognize what was going on. So I'm going to take you to this blog briefly, just to skim. So we have, Trump calling this the Great Christmas Miracle. And then on December 21st, the winter solstice, he was voted the most admired man by the Gallup poll. And this was a fulfillment of Revelation 13:3, or I should say a partial fulfillment. It says, and I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Well, guess what the word wondered means? It's the Greek word thaumazo, and it means to be admired. Well, guess what this word wound is in Greek? Plague. Didn't he recover in October 2020 from a deadly corona plague after 3 days? And then he went on record to say that he had a very strong immune system and that he was going to donate his plasma for V research. Okay. We're told that the beast shall perform lying signs and wonders, and he will be healed from a deadly plague. 2 Thessalonians 2:9, Revelation 13:13. In October 2020, President Trump and his family supposedly contracted the deadly V, for which they all recovered quickly. And as I've already said, the word wound in Revelation 13:3 is the Greek word plague, which means plague. Okay? And on December 21st was something else going on. There was an announcement made in the news media that the astrological sign was taking place in the heavens. The secular news media was calling it the Star of Bethlehem, but it's not the Star of Bethlehem. There was a conjunction taking place between Jupiter and Saturn. However, what the secular news media did not realize is that the true and genuine Messiah named Yahushua, who many would call Jesus, was born under a different conjunction between Jupiter and Venus. See, back in 2002, after the events of 9/11, I read this book, The Star of Bethlehem, The Star That Astonished the World, and Dr. Martin cites the astronomical record that took place on September the 11th in 3 BC, which happened to fall on the Feast of Trumpets, and it is seen in Revelation 12:1-5. The Virgin, the constellation of the Virgin, was giving birth to the Lion of Judah. And I have the links here that you can read my blogs on the subject. But see, December 21st, 2020 was also the same day that there was a conjunction between two zodiac signs, Sagittarius and Capricorn. And on the Mayan calendar, the New Agers in the occult world say that December 21st, 2020 was the birth of Antichrist. Now, not birth in the literal sense, like, being born as a newborn baby, but what they mean is that he's going to be overshadowed by the spirit of Apollyon, which is the Greek name, but in ancient Egyptian, it's Osiris, right? In ancient Babylon, it's the spirit of Nimrod. So in the occult world, they say that the Mayan calendar tells us December 21st, 2020 is when the resurrection of the Osiris, when he's reincarnated. Nimrod is reincarnated on this date, that it's the birth of Antichrist. Okay? Now, you will notice that the Sagittarius looks like the rider on the white horse from Revelation 6:2. Okay? It's a half man, half horse.
Sorta.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And, I remember this was 6 months earlier in March of that year that I was just kind of not even really paying attention to what was going on in the world. And the Spirit of Yahuwah spoke to me and said, go look up Revelation 6:2. And he tells me to look up the word bow and crown. And when I looked up bow, it's the Greek word toxon, which means a poisoned bow and arrow. A bow and arrow in which poisons are dipped. And it was in that moment he said, Trump is the rider on the white horse. He's the one that's going to, spearhead these poisoned bow and arrows. And then if you read a few verses later in Revelation 6:8, it says a fourth part of the population of the earth died. A fourth part. And as I was reading, my mind was blown, and I realized that Father was showing me that Trump was going to be the one to implement this. And then, so the Sagittarius started on November 22nd, and it ended on December 21st, the day that the New Agers claim the birth of Antichrist. And this is the rider on the white horse. Okay. And then began a new zodiac cycle of Capricorn, the goats, on December 22nd through January 19th. And Revelation 13:11 says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns, like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. Well, we all know that the goat is Baphomet the goat. Okay? And the two-horned goat in Revelation 13:11 is America. The two horns on this beast represents the two-party system. So that was something that was really eye-opening. But then guess what happened? Trump told people to march on January 6th at the Capitol Dome. And here's why. Okay? I'm going to skim this just a little bit. So what is the Insurrection Act? Well, the Insurrection Act gives the president the power to deploy the military and federal forces across the U.S. It was originally passed in 1807 by Congress. They created the act to allow the president to use U.S. armed troops and federalized National Guard troops inside its own borders. However, it can only be used to suppress revolutions against the government and prevent civil disorder. It has never been imposed in the United States on a nationwide basis. How could the Insurrection Act be invoked? Mr. Trump has the power to use the Insurrection Act if he attempts to diffuse a rebellion or civil unrest through other means first, and if unsuccessful, a president cannot invoke the Insurrection Act secretly or ambiguously. Before doing so, he must ask the insurgents to disperse and retire peaceably to their abodes within a limited time, thereby giving people an opportunity to retreat. He also has to allow Congress and the public to respond to his plans. According to the text of the act, it says, it is lawful for the President of the United States to call forth the militia for the purpose of suppressing such insurrection.
You want to bet that if the dog and pony show happens with the third Trump indictment, that at the end of it, there could be chaos on a broad level. We've already seen what BLM has done in multiple cities around the country.
Right.
Some might still jump to that, and others may not have the stomach for it because they've already lived through that once and thought it was crazy. So you might actually have Americans begging, in large part, not even maybe a majority, but in large part, Americans begging for him to step in and do something on a national basis.
Right.
Which it just said they have to, has to appear before Congress, and he has, they've got to be requested, So I can totally see this as a viable option.
Right. So on January 6, 2020, Trump was very close to invoking the Insurrection Act. There are still conflicting reports as to whether or not he actually did invoke the Insurrection Act. Now, this article claims that he did. And this is what it says. Did Trump sign the Insurrection Act? This article says no. Trump has not signed the Insurrection Act. That's Reuters. Is that how you pronounce it? Reuters. But the social media account team at Team Trump News falsely alleged that he had. Okay, that's what Reuters said. Reuters said it was a false report. Posting under the guise of Trump himself, the Team Trump News account wrote, I have invoked the Insurrection Act of 1807 to address the treasonous rebellion conducted by Democrat and Republican lawmakers, CCP agents, the FBI, DOJ, CIA, and others to undermine, corrode, and dismantle the United States of America and its Constitution.
So I think what happened is that the Insurrection Act was not invoked because if it would have been, he would have done something with it.
Yeah.
And nothing was done. But by there being a false flag, a false planting that he did, suddenly Americans were introduced to this thing called the Insurrection Act. Now it's sort of been floated out there for a few years, and this won't be a new thing this time around.
Right.
People will go, oh, what about that Insurrection Act thing that was last time? We need to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll know to ask for it.
And then it says, these entities pose a direct threat to national security. He says, I will remain president indefinitely until all domestic enemies are arrested. Now, supposedly this showed up on the Team Trump News account, and Reuters says it was a false account. But I think that nothing's by accident. I mean, everything they do, they're doing it for a reason.
Yeah, even if it was a false account. So what? Hackers, you have government hackers. The CIA are hackers.
Right.
They can do that stuff.
So I want to propose something. Why would Trump allow himself to be so close to enacting an insurrection? Doesn't it seem counterproductive to his political career to be falsely accused of insurrection? Or was it really a false accusation? Could there be a secret magic trick he was performing that most of us didn't notice? Can you remember the charges that were brought up against our Messiah on the Feast of Passover in Mark's Gospel? See, since the Luciferians do not honor Passover, they conducted their sex magic ritual on the Roman Catholic Feast of the Epiphany, January the 6th. See, in the Roman Catholic Church, they claim that the wise men came to visit the baby Jesus on January the 6th. So why do you think Trump invited his followers to come and visit him underneath the Capitol dome on January 6th? You see, the Greek word epiphania means God manifest, and it has a numerical value of 666 in Greek gematria. There was another anti-Messiah leader named Antiochus Epiphanes. He gave himself this title, Epiphania, in 167 BC. as he erected a statue of Zeus in the temple, claiming that he was the manifestation of God or Zeus. And now we have another anti-Messiah leader who's openly claiming to be the manifestation of God, but few people can see it because they lack spiritual discernment. So what do we have here? This is a scene from the Passion of the Christ. We have, the Messiah on one side. Pontius Pilate says, whom shall I release to you? Yahushua or Barabbas. Now, Mark 15:6 says, now at that feast he released unto them one prisoner whom they desired. Mark 15:7 says, and there was one named Barabbas. Now, Barabbas is in Aramaic is Bar Abba, which means son of the father. He actually had a first name, which the King James Bible calls him Bar Jesus, Jesus Barabbas, but really it was Joshua. Okay, it wasn't Jesus, it was Joshua. So he had the same name as the Messiah. So these were like the Yom Kippur twin goats. So if you understand the Yom Kippur ceremony that's done in Leviticus 16, one goat is killed and the other goat is let free into the wilderness. So what we had here was the Yom Kippur scapegoat was Messiah, Yahushua, because the word scapegoat means the innocent party who takes the blame for the guilty party. Well, Barabbas means son of the father. He represented the whole nation of Israel. They were guilty as a nation. But what did he do? Yahushua took their place. He became the scapegoat. He was the innocent party who took the blame or the place for the guilty party. Barabbas really was guilty of insurrection, but he was let go. He was let to go free, and the real Messiah was killed on behalf of the nation. Okay? And so in Mark 15:7, it says, there was one named Barabbas, which lay bound with them that had made insurrection with him, who had committed murder in the insurrection. So he was the real insurrectionist, but he got let go. He was the one that was set free, and Messiah became the scapegoat. He was the innocent party who took the place of the guilty. So the Romans allowed Barabbas to go free after being imprisoned for insurrection. Why? Because they falsely accused our Messiah of insurrection. Do you see what is taking place with Trump? They were making him look like the Messiah by accusing him of insurrection. You see, this has all been staged. Trump knew this was going to happen before it even happened, and he wanted it to happen because that's how they're going to make him look like the suffering servant, the Messiah. Okay? And they organized this event on January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany, when they believed that the Magi, which are the wise men, Magi is a Greek word that means, that's short for magicians. It means magicians, right? And this was called the Million MAGA March. Now, in the fifth degree of Satanism, they call that MAGA. Okay, in English it's MAGA, but in Latin it's magus, meaning a magician. MAGA, magus, is the fifth and highest degree in Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. And I have the link here. In a televised interview, the spirit-cooking witch named Marina Abramovich said that Trump is playing the role of the magician in the tarot card deck. And you can listen to the clip of her saying it here. She's actually saying she went to the shamans and she asked the shamans, what is the deal with Trump? And they said that Trump has been chosen to cause a great awakening in the world and to bring in a new age of enlightenment. In other words, the enlightenment of Lucifer. Okay? Now, when you have a Marina Abramovich, the spirit cooking witch who services all the Hollywood celebrities, saying that Trump was chosen to bring in an awakening, okay, that he's the magician, okay, you know that this is something huge, okay, that he's been chosen by the shamans and by all the occultists in the world. And here's the website, Church of Satan. Registered member, no degree. Active member, Satanist, first degree. Witch or warlock, second degree. Priestess or priest, third degree. Magistra or magister, fourth degree. Magus, fifth degree. So all these people calling themselves Christians, they're wearing the MAGA hat, unbeknownst to them, or maybe they know, I don't know, but by inviting the Magi, the fellow magicians, wearing the MAGA hats to help him conduct the insurrection, this was a satanic Kabbalah magic ritual. He was rounding up his followers, just like on the night our Messiah was being arrested. And gee, the liberal opposition were crying, impeach him. This sounds very similar to crucify him, crucify him. Remember, after January 6th, they were all saying, impeach, impeach, impeach. Okay, so interestingly, the Greek word for sword in Revelation 13:14 is makira, which means judicial punishment. It says that the beast survives a deadly wound by a sword and then lives. Well, if the word sword means judicial punishment, then you can see where this is going. It says in Revelation 13:14 that he deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had this wound by a sword and did live. The wound by a sword is judicial punishment. And at that time, Trump had 2 impeachment attempts. But he came out of the 2 impeachment attempts unscathed. And what did they do right after he survived the 2 impeachment attempts? They made an image, a golden image of Trump at the CPAC event in March of 2021, right after he overcame the 2 impeachment attempts, after he survived the deadly wound. Okay? I mean, it's crazy. But here's the meaning of the dome. You got St. Peter's Dome in the Vatican. You got St. Paul's Dome in London. You've got the U.S. Capitol Dome. In the occult world, this represents the womb of Isis, the Queen of Heaven. In other, in Roman Catholicism, it's the womb of Mary Magdalene. The Jesuits believe that Jesus and Mary Magdalene got married. And I'm using Jesus on purpose because that's what they call him. They believe Jesus and Mary Magdalene got married and that they had a daughter named Sarah. And so they believe that this right here represents the womb of Mary Magdalene, or, Queen of Heaven from ancient mystery Babylon religion. And the obelisk is supposed to be the uncircumcised phallus of Nimrod. You've got one in London, one in the Vatican, in front of the Vatican, and one in Washington, D.C. So in all 3 of these places, you have the phallus with the womb, the phallus with the womb, the phallus with the womb. Because what they do at these inauguration events is they're doing a sex magic ritual. I learned this. Gary and I learned it when we watched that film called The Belly of the Beast. It was produced by the Fall Brothers, and I recommend it. I'll tell you the link when we get to the end of this blog.
Make sure you see the director's cut version. It's the latest one.
So there's 3 power structures in the world that forms like a triangle. The United Kingdom, finance, the Bank of London, the Rothschilds. Then you have Washington, D.C., which is the military arm of this structure. The District of Columbia, the New Rome. And then you have the Vatican City, the religion, the seven hills of Rome. So these three religious power structures form a triangle. So directly across from the womb of Isis, there's the Capitol Dome, the phallus of Nimrod, a.k.a. Apollo. You see, Nimrod comes from the ancient mystery religion of Babylon, but with each successive empire, the same spirit that was in Nimrod kept coming back in different forms. He came back inside of Nebuchadnezzar, and then all the pharaohs. And you've got Apollyon, it's the same demon spirit, but it just takes on different identities, different names. Osiris in Egypt. In Greek, it's Apollyon. In fact, the word inaugurate comes from the Latin root word ogre. The word ogre means to cast spells or to practice magic or witchcraft. So what these Luciferians are practicing at every presidential inauguration is a sex magic ritual meant to bring up the spirit of Osiris or Nimrod or Saturn or Apollo. These are all the same entity, but they are given different names in different languages and different cultures. But we know who he is. Revelation 9:11 says the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon. Abaddon. Now, people thought that, the Bible named Obama because, Messiah said, I saw Satan fall as lightning. And of course, in Hebrew, the word for Barak means, lightning. But the only problem is the Hebrew word for Barak is spelled with a Q. But when it's spelled with a K, a kaf, a Hebrew letter kaf, it doesn't mean lightning. It means blessed. So Barack Obama doesn't spell his name with the kuf, which is the equivalent of the English Q. He spells his name with a K. So if the word Barak is spelled with a Q, it means lightning. But if the word Barak is spelled with a kaf or a K, it means blessed. So Barack Obama doesn't mean the lightning that fell from heaven, as everybody claims. But what do we have here? A bad dawn. Okay? So you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. And, Trump even tweeted on August 21st, 2019, that he's the king of Israel, that the Jewish people love him like he's the second coming of God. So what does it say about the little horn? That he speaks great things and blasphemies against the Most High. And, you can go to this blog called Trump's Merovingian Royal Bloodline. I go into a lot of detail about Trump's royal bloodline, how his family are supposed to be directly descended from Christ himself. That's why his father's name was Fred Christ Trump. His grandmother's name was Elizabeth Christ Trump. These people believe they are directly descended from the union of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. That's what they believe. And, this cult worships the womb of Mary Magdalene. They call it the Holy Grail. The dome? They call that dome the Holy Grail, because they claim that, the holy Jesus copulated there. So therefore, the dome, the womb of Mary Magdalene is holy. I mean, it's disgusting, I know. And I even hate to say those words because they're so disgusting. And this was all explained in the Da Vinci Code film, which I broke down and I explain in the blog. In fact, even in the film, there was a picture of Donald Trump's mother on the wall that most people wouldn't have noticed, but I noticed it. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're telling us that Donald Trump's mother is the Holy Grail. that her womb bore the Antichrist, the little horn. So it's all there, people, but it went over most people's heads. Most people didn't even notice what was going on January 6th. Everybody thinks it's about the riots and the upheaval. No. That's the diversion. That's what they want you to look at. They want you to look at the rioting and the ruckus, but that's not really what that was about. The whole thing was about this sex magic ritual. I believe Trump was displaying himself as the Apollyon. The Apollyon. Okay? Now, this was earlier this year, March 18th, 2023, Trump announced that he was going to be arrested. But then the arrest didn't take place until, first he said he was going to be arrested on Tuesday, March 21st, the eve of March 22nd. And in the Skull and Bones, which is a cult that the Bush family are very much a part of, it's an order of the Skull and Bones. They use the number 322 to secretly give out the number 666, because you got 3 times, 2, which is 6, right? So they're secretly trying to give out the number 666 with 322. John Kerry, I've got articles here. The Order of the Skull and Bones, John Kerry and the Brotherhood of the Death, Yale Secret Society. So first Trump said, that he was going to be arrested on March 22nd, 322. Then that didn't happen. Then it was delayed till March 23rd. So I Googled it and I found out that there's a very secret meaning to these numbers that have to do with the skull and bones. The QAnon people say that Trump speaks in code. In fact, Daniel 8:23 says the little horn speaks in dark sentences. And if you look up the Hebrew word for dark sentences, it's kida, which means a puzzle or a trick or a riddle. So it's true. He does understand dark sentences and he does speak in code. Okay. So there was a reason why he made it look like he was going to get arrested on March 22nd. And then that didn't happen. Then he said he was going to be arrested on March 23rd. So he's putting out these secret codes, these secret numbers having to do with the Order of the Skull and Bones. And, this was something I posted on Facebook back in December of 2022. Will Orange Man wear the orange jumpsuit? How did I know that this was going to happen? Because in the film called Megamind, I recognized that Megamind is supposed to be Donald Trump. And Megamind was in jail, but he escaped from jail. He got out. And his sidekick is Minion, which makes me think maybe Minion has to do with the Dominion voting machines. Maybe Dominion voting machines are going to be the means of his escape, right? Because it's going to be through the Dominion voting machines that he's vindicated, and now the charges will be dropped against him. So isn't that interesting? In the film Megamind, he escapes prison by wearing this thing called a hollow watch, where he can shapeshift, or in other words, he performs a deep fake by taking an image of the warden, and then he makes himself look like the warden. In fact, even in the movie, Megamind makes himself look like Marlon Brando from the Godfather movie, and he says, "I am your father. I am like your space dad," because he injected Hal with this DNA altering substance. And right after he does that, he tells Hal, "I am your father. I'm like your space dad." Well, Trump's latest delusion, April 29th, 2021, "I'm the father of the V." Look, and he's holding out his hands the same way that Megamind is in the movie. You think that's a coincidence? I don't think so. Even the big hair. Of course, it's exaggerated, But I think the big hair is pointing to Trump's big hair, right? See, they scripted everything. Okay. As I've already said, Revelation 13:14, the beast is healed. In other words, he recovers from a deadly wound. The Greek word for wound means heavy affliction, plague, or a public calamity. The word sword in Greek is makira, and it means judicial punishment. I believe the beast will recover after being arrested and indicted. I believe Trump's getting out of this, just like Megamind escaped jail when Minion, his sidekick, sent him this watch called a hollow watch. But in this case, Minion is the Dominion voting machines that are going to vindicate him, right? I think that's what they were telling us in the Megamind movie. So another movie that I recommend, or I actually broke it down and analyzed it, it's called The Terminal with Tom Hanks. And there was some predictive programming in this about the Trump indictments. It's pretty interesting. If you go read the blog, it's right here. And, you know, why is Tom Hanks wearing all brown? I think most people wouldn't put this together, but I started thinking, well, you know, Hitler was able to get out of jail after 9 months after he was arrested for insurrection. Did you know that? Did you know that Hitler was arrested for insurrection and he was in jail for 9 months? Who helped him rise back to power were the brown shirts. This is why I think Tom Hanks is wearing all brown. But you'll see when you read the blog, okay? And, you know, Trump's ex-wife, Ivana, said that he kept Hitler's books by his bedside, and he would read Hitler's speeches every night before going to bed. She wrote this in her memoirs. And it's crazy because people think Trump's not a globalist, that he's going to free us from the tyranny of the global elites. But here you have him cohorting with them. Don't be fooled, people. He's making himself look like he's the one that's going to save us from globalism. But he's really in bed with the globalists. So don't be fooled by that. Here, I've got a link here. Hitler sentenced for his role in the Beer Hall Putsch. Okay, it explains how Hitler went to jail for 9 months because he was arrested for insurrection. But what happened? He rose to power after that. Now, in this case, I don't know that Trump will necessarily go to jail, but I think he will somehow get out of it, possibly with this new, election fraud case, right? And I have another blog that tells us about Trump's involvement with the Rothschilds. People think that only King Charles is part of the crown, but don't be fooled. Trump is part of the crown too. Okay. And I don't have time to go into all of this, but I would like to share something about the Hegelian dialectic. What is the Hegelian dialectic? Most people don't understand what it is. The Hegelian dialectic is a framework for guiding thoughts and actions into conflicts that lead into let me read this again. Hegelian dialectic, a framework for guiding thoughts and actions into conflicts that lead to synthetic solutions, which can only be introduced once those being manipulated take a side that will advance the predetermined agenda. Controlled opposition is problem, reaction, solution. So Biden's the problem, and now Trump comes back as the reaction, or I should say the people react, and now Trump comes back as the solution, right? So one of the strategies of the Illuminati is this left-right paradigm. It's their way of cornering you so that you feel compelled into choosing one of two evils, one of the two alternatives, the lesser of the two evils. Now, if I'm at a restaurant, I might be put in the position to having to choose between something on the menu that is either too expensive or something that is too unhealthy. In that instance, choosing the lesser of both evils means choosing the more expensive item because I won't compromise my health for the sake of a few extra dollars. However, when it comes to a moral dilemma, such as choosing the white witch or the black witch in the Wizard of Oz, I will choose neither one because both of the witches are working for Satan. But see, this is exactly what American believers and American Christians are doing when they vote. They don't realize that no matter who they choose, they're choosing Satan or a servant of Satan. Okay? Now, I took this image from the Princess Bride, and you have, Vizzini's got a blade up to the Princess Bride's face, and here you've got Wesley. He said, it ends when you decide and we both vote. Okay, this is what they want you to do. And then Vizzini says to Wesley, are you the sort of man who would put the poison into his own goblet or his enemy's goblet? Now, a clever man would put the poison in his own goblet because he would know that only a great fool will reach for what is given to him. Okay, so here's the plot. We've all seen this narrative played out in films such as The Princess Bride when Wesley challenges Vizzini to a game of Russian roulette using a cup of poisoned wine. Wesley turns away and pours odorless, tasteless poison in 2 cups of wine, scrambling the cups as he serves them. Vizzini assumes Wesley served him the poisoned cup, so he diverts his attention for a moment and he switches the cups. When Vizzini drinks his cup, he dies within moments. Wesley knew Vizzini would switch the cups when his attention was diverted. Therefore, he served him the poisoned cup. Wesley outsmarted Vizzini by letting him think he outsmarted him. What most people didn't pick up on, and Gary's the one that told me this, he clued me in, is that Wesley had been building up his tolerance to the poison for years, and he actually poisoned both of the cups. That is how he outsmarted Vizzini. Both cups contained the same poison, just like in the left-right paradigm between Democrats and Republicans. They both have the same agenda. This is exactly what is taking place with the left-right paradigm. The right-wing conservative president knows what his constituents will do before they even do it. He is a master chess player, and he has been trained for this role for many years. Therefore, he uses a strategy to make them feel sorry for him. He is the poor, persecuted martyr, and they are bleeding hearts that are more than willing to fight for him. He has made lofty promises to them about making their country great again. He promises to go after the cabal, the pedophiles, the child sex trafficking rings, and the corrupt bankers. Before you know it, his followers are blindly loyal to an imposter, and they have no idea who he really is. There's a term for this, and it's called controlled opposition. See, we are all being played divide and conquer. If they keep us fighting with each other, we will never fight the true enemy, the establishment. Divide and conquer mechanisms, skin color, nationality, sexual identity, religion, language, profession, class, social customs, political identity. And now there's a new one. It's called Flat Earth. Because if you're a globe earther like me and Gary, they call us Satanists because they think that we don't believe in the Bible because we believe the earth is a globe. So they planted that one too. Okay?
And regarding what you're saying, we're hearing all about, Trump's going to save the children, right? He's going to get the bad guys. And they're thinking that, well, if he's going to get the bad guys, then he can't be a bad guy himself.
Right.
Well, again, just like this situation with Princess Bride, that was a one-on-one.
Right.
So he outsmarted the guy by taking the poison too because it didn't hurt him. If you look at this worldwide agenda, in which, sort of like these massive mafia families.
Right.
It doesn't hurt the organization for a few hundred of their hitmen or their flunkies underneath them to get killed.
Mm-hmm.
They're cannon fodder. It's all part of the resources that are spent to achieve something. So just because some pedophiles are put into jail, or this person gets put into prison, or this person dies or is killed, that's not really hurting them.
Right.
That loss is part of their calculated gain.
Exactly. Yeah, so controlled opposition is when the enemy makes himself look like the good guy, the savior, or the hero. He does this by allowing his opposition to beat him. He takes so many hits and so many blows that his followers are even more beholden to him than if he had won the fight. Now, here's a parable. Imagine that a lady is walking slowly down the street when along comes a villain with a ski mask on and grabs her purse, knocking her down to the ground. He takes off with her money and credit cards. Another clean-cut young gentleman comes along and helps the poor old lady get up from the ground. Not only that, he tells the lady he will help recover her purse, and he runs to find the thief that stole the purse. Meanwhile, 2 streets away, the 2 men, the thief and the clean-cut man, split the money that was taken from the old lady's purse. The young man then returns the purse to the old lady. The little old woman is so grateful for his selfless, heroic act that she asks him to drive her to the ATM machine where she withdraws more cash and gives it to him as a reward. And there you go. The little old lady is convinced that the clean-cut young man had her best interests at heart. Even when the police question the old lady and they inform her that the purse thief and the young man were working together, she still refuses to believe it. She even becomes angry at the police officers for telling her the truth about the young man. When asked to testify against the young man in court, the old lady refuses to testify against him. She is so convinced that the young man is her rescuer and the masked bandit is the bad guy working solo. Do you see what they're doing? Okay. President Trump, Pope Francis, Bill Gates, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, they're all working together. They all worked together to implement something called Operation Lockstep. It was the plan that they had for CV before it rolled out in 2020. And you can see the videos here, the plan for martial law from 2010. Okay. Also, Rothschilds caught rigging the U.S. presidential election in 2016. August 5th, 2016. This news article is by a man named Baxter Dimitri. Listen what he says. He says, the U.S. presidential election was rigged even before the first ballot was cast. Everybody knows Hillary Clinton is the establishment's candidate of choice, backed by the Rothschilds and the New World Order. What is less known is that Donald Trump is also a Rothschild creation and actor, playing a part in the great sham that is the Illuminati's fake election designed to keep control of the people in this supposedly democratic society. Political analysts have been saying that Trump's tilt for the presidency has been 30 years in the making. This makes more sense than they realize. 30 years ago, members of the Rothschild family saved Trump from bankruptcy and took him under their wing. They recognized his potential as a man of use and a colorful frontman for a secretive organization that prefers to keep itself in the shadows. Consider how Trump built his wealth and who supported him during his booms and busts. Now, it's true that Trump did inherit $413 million from his grandmother, but at one point he almost went belly up. Okay? In 1987, Donald Trump purchased his first casino interests when he acquired 93% of the shares in Resorts International. Resorts International has a sordid history which began in the early 1950s when it evolved from a CIA and Mossad front company, which had been established for the purpose of laundering the profits from drug trafficking, gambling, and other illegal activities. On October 30th, 1978, the Spotlight newspaper reported that the principal investors of Resorts International were Meyer Lansky, Tibor Rosenbaum, William Mellon Hitchcock, David Rockefeller, and one Baron Edmund D. Rothschild. In 1987, upon the death of a longtime CIA frontman, James Crosby, the nominal head of Resorts International, up-and-coming young New York real estate tycoon Donald Trump stepped into the picture and bought Crosby's interest in the gambling empire. Trump soon became a household name with his colorful personality and his insistence upon naming a variety of luxury hotels, apartments, houses, and other commercial ventures after himself. But while the name Trump appeared in the headlines, the names of the real movers behind Resorts International, Rockefeller and Rothschild, remained hidden from the public view. After quickly expanding the reach of Resorts International to Atlantic City in the final years of the 1980s, Donald Trump found himself in a financial trouble as the real estate market in New York tanked. The 3 casinos in Atlantic City, like other Trump assets, were under threat from lenders. It was only with the assistance and assurance of Wilbur L. Ross Jr., senior managing director of Rothschild Inc., that Trump was allowed to keep the casinos and rebuild his threatened empire. This was detailed in a Bloomberg article, March 22nd, 1992. The same Wilbur L. Ross, still Jacob Rothschild's right-hand man, came out in support of Trump's nomination in March of 2016, also reported by Bloomberg. Jacob Rothschild's son, Nat Rothschild, even dated Ivanka Trump. Both major party candidates are controlled globalist powers that be. You have Hillary Clinton sacrificing chickens and preparing to pay her penance to the Rothschilds. Meanwhile, Trump appears to have been bought long ago. He was made by the Rothschilds. Either way, American citizens don't have a choice in this election. The Illuminati have been working behind the scenes for decades, creating the actors to play the roles. This was Illuminati's plan all along, to have both candidates operating under their interests while systematically pitting the entire nation against each other, creating the chaos they need to push the New World Order agenda closer to completion. And you have this article, Rothschilds Caught Rigging the U.S. Presidential Election. So President Trump is helping to carry out Operation Lockstep, which was planned by the Rockefellers years ago. And you could see all the links I have here. So who America thinks they're voting for, okay, this was 2016, Hillary versus Trump. Who they're actually voting for, Rothschilds versus Rockefellers, okay? That's who they are actually voting for, okay? President Trump was deliberately selected, not elected, for this Operation Lockstep plan years ago. And this also includes Operation Warp Speed. See, American Christians are preoccupied with trying to save America as a republic. The Roman Empire was a republic also. Rather than saving souls, all they care about is saving America, just like Lot's wife looking back at Sodom and Gomorrah as it burns to the ground. That's all they care about. But Scripture tells us that the true martyrs of Messiah love not their lives, even unto death. See, he that loves the world is the enemy of Elohim. Why are you trying to preserve the government of the Roman Empire? Revelation 13:11 reveals that America is the second beast that exercises all the power of the first beast, the Holy Roman Empire. In other words, the Roman Empire was both a republic and a democracy. If you are a patriot, of this kind of government, you are not fit for the theocratic government that our Messiah will bring with him at his return. If you are a patriot of this revived Holy Roman Empire, you are carnal and worldly. Most believers are not paying attention to the more urgent matter of the mark of the beast, the V that's being rolled out by Trump, and what's coming next with the World Economic Forum. They're more interested in preserving the American dream when they should be warning their friends and family not to worship the beast, nor take his mark, nor take his image. They care more about saving a nation that is just like Sodom and Gomorrah than they do about leaving this world to be with our Messiah. They are like Lot's wife looking back at Sodom and Gomorrah while it burns to the ground. Stop trying to save President Trump. He doesn't care about you. Stop trying to save the revived Holy Roman Empire. You should be more concerned with your own soul and the soul of your loved ones. Trump is not trying to save us. He is not trying to save America. He is paying back a debt of gratitude to the Rothschilds. He owes them. And not only that, he's got all the royal bloodline, all the royal pedigree that they need to push him into power to build the third Jewish temple. Trust me, he doesn't care about America. It's all a big game. Okay. Now, there's more to this, but I'm done. I just wanted to read the highlights. But I want you guys to know that in the coming months, the coming weeks, however long this takes, they're going to drag this out. That there's going to be all this election fraud stuff is going to be brought out, but it's all fake. It's all fake. Both sides are working together. The Democrats and the Republicans. They made it seem like there was election fraud, and it's all part of the, like there's a movie and they're actors and they're each playing their part.
The important thing to remember about that, and we have people who we know who they still, they know us on a more personal level and they still struggle with this. Just because they can prove there was some fraud doesn't mean that this isn't orchestrated. It means fraud is part of one of the sides of the dialectic. There is fraud. There is scheming on both sides. There is laws that are broken. There is scams. And they're being perpetrated on purpose.
Right.
It's not an accident.
Right. Now, I will say this. We shouldn't hate America. We should still love the people that live here. We should still love the land that Yahuwah has given us here, right? But we shouldn't love the corrupt government.
Right. There's nothing wrong with enjoying baseball or a football game or apple pie and picnics and the culture that we have.
Yeah.
The good things. Yahuwah enjoys a picnic. He enjoys having relaxation with friends and family, or maybe going hiking. Or so it's not that we hate America. I don't hate America.
Right. Me neither.
I don't even hate what our republic started out as trying to be. It's, the closest thing to Israel, the way it operated, as they could figure out how to do. Nevertheless, you look at every nation on earth and they've gone through a downward spiral. They all self-implode because the commonality there is mankind.
Right.
So it's doomed to fail. And we just happen to be, thankfully, in what I believe in is my lifetime, we're at the end of the age. I believe that. So I'm not saying, don't get involved. And if some bad person tries to take control of your kid's school, that you shouldn't try to vote them down. And you yourself, as a righteous person, try to take that office. That's great. That's fine. But in terms of voting for people that you know nothing about and putting your faith in people that make promises, but you know nothing about them to see whether they're actually the person they proclaim to be.
Yeah.
That's just not wise. I'm done with that.
In the summer of 2020, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, just spoke to me and said, look up the meaning of the word vote. So I went and looked it up, and I was stunned to find out It's from the Latin, a solemn promise to take a vow. Wow. And what did our Messiah tell us in Matthew chapter 6? He says, do not swear. He told us not to swear, you know?
And that doesn't mean foul language. That means make an oath.
Right. Now, it's different if you're going to take wedding vows between you and your spouse, or if you're going to take a vow to Yahuwah, that's fine. But you're taking a vow to somebody you don't know. When you vote, you're taking a vow. And if those people have taken vows to Satan, and you take a vow to somebody who's taken a vow to Satan, you are indirectly, without realizing it, taking a vow to Satan with them.
Or at least you're, without knowing, sort of approving of the curses that come upon them.
Right.
And their influence on your nation.
Right.
And if you look at, Bill Clinton, for me, when I was growing up, is the most obvious choice. It was obvious he committed adultery.
Right.
And he was a
philanderer.
Philanderer. That's what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. That he had been doing this for a long time. And yet everyone was like, I don't care what he does in his personal life.
We should
really.
Care. Yeah.
You don't care. You don't think that character is going to follow him in his decisions. Yeah. That was a big change in America. After that, politicians stopped having any sense of shame, and they learned, I'll just keep denying it, and it doesn't matter how much evidence they have.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, here it is, Matthew 5. I thought it was Matthew 6. He says, but I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is Elohim's throne. We're not supposed to swear at all. And that means don't vote. Okay? Don't vote for somebody you don't even know,
Yeah, that's like approving things you can't attest to. That's like saying, I know this person. I mean, you wouldn't trust someone who was coming to your company and you said, hey, such and so, I happen to hear about my company has an opening, right? And then they come in and say, this person recommended me for the job, and they're going to check with you, and you don't really know the person at all. They're an acquaintance, but you decide to say, yeah, I know them. I recommend them for the job. And then they ended up doing horrible stuff.
Right.
You're not going to do that because it's too close to home. You recognize that you're not going to be responsible for what they do.
Right.
But yet in the political office, we do that very thing.
Right. And people act like, oh, it's our civil duty. We have to vote. No place in the scriptures does it tell us to vote. You know how kings were chosen in a theocratic government? Was that the prophet, Yahuwah spoke to the prophet, and the prophet was the one who chose the king, and he would take a flask of oil, or a horn filled with oil, and he would pour it on the head of the king. The people, there was no voting system in ancient Israel, In fact, right here in Deuteronomy 17, it says, starting with verse 15, he says, well, let me start with verse 14. It says, when you are coming unto the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you, and you shall possess it, and shall dwell therein, and shall say, I will set a king over me, like as all the nations that are about me. He says, you shall set a king over you, whom Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose. One from among your brethren shall you set king over you. You may not set a stranger over you, which is not your brother. He's telling us not to choose a king who is not one of us, who is, not one of our brethren. But see, this is why these Freemasons will lie and say that they're a born-again Christian, like George H.W. Bush called himself a born-again Christian, and people bought it. But you see, the reason they get away with that is because they believe that the fallen angel Lucifer in Isaiah 14:12, that's quote-unquote Jesus. They believe Jesus is the one who fell from heaven in Isaiah 14:12. So basically, when they say I'm born again, they mean they've been born again into the light of Lucifer, because Lucifer is a Latin name that means light bringer, because Satan transforms himself as an angel of light. He can make himself look like he's a light bringer, but he's just a reflection of the true light. The true light is Yahushua. He is the light of the world. It's like if I held up a mirror and I reflected the light bulb on the ceiling I'm not the source of that light. I just have a mirror and I can reflect the light, but I'm not the one who I'm not the true light giver. All I'm doing is reflecting the true light with my mirror. He reflects the true light of Yahushua, but he has people believing he's the true source of that light.
Right.
You know, it took me 24 hours straight to write this blog. I didn't come up for air. I literally sat at this computer for 24 hours straight and wrote this blog.
Yep, I can attest to that. It's true. I slept while she stayed up.
Because when the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, starts downloading information to me, I can't stop. It's like I have to keep typing until I'm done. So that ends the discussion about Trump, the phoenix rising from the ashes.
Shabbat Shalom. Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you Shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.